Hey guys, welcome to Exotic Car Hacks. We are back today with another exciting exotic car review, and today we are looking at the 2014 Aston Martin Vanquish. Now this is no ordinary Vanquish. We're going to get to talk about that, but you may have been noticing, if you follow the strategies of Exotic Car Hacks, where we are getting in and out of exotic cars without losing any money, we are realizing that the Vanquishers are slowly and surely becoming one of the greatest cars to own under $150,000. Now, if you've been following us for a while, then you know that this is my third new generation Vanquish. Now, between my first Centenary Edition to then my second convertible carbon white edition, and now this Skyfall Silver 2014 car. So the question is, why 2014 first off? 2014 was the last year before the transmission and ECU upgrade of 2015. Meaning that the 2014 cars still boast the older transmission and the older ECU. Good or bad? Well, there's two folds to that. The good news is that the 2014s are more customizable than the 2015s. The bad news is that obviously with the lower transmission, it doesn't drive as well as the old one. We've changed that, and I'll get into that in a second. But one of the other great things about a 2014 is that because of the older transmission, it's now become an incredible bargain to now own a $330,000 car for under $140,000. And some units going as low as $125,000. So that's just so much car for the money when you compare it to other cars you could buy in this range, like the Gallardo, the Ferrari 430, all of which are older technologies. Now, there is something to be known about the Vanquish. First off, it may seem like it has a sports shift, and one of the biggest misconceptions on the Vanquish is that it does not indeed have an actual clutch. It is a full automatic with a torque converter and a rev match on the ECU, so it feels like you're driving an actual real clutch car with the paddles, but in reality you're driving nothing more than an automatic. In one way, it's really exciting because you get the same audio and feel, but you don't get the performance, but it was really never built for that. On the other hand, the other benefit to that is you don't get as much of the breakdowns, especially because Aston transmissions, especially single clutch transmissions, are ancient and complete pieces of crap. So should you buy a 14 Vanquish? Well, we believe that based on where the values are going and how much value you're getting for 140 grand on the higher end of the tier and as low as 125, there isn't a car in the market that is as amazing as the Vanquish. It's not seen as much on the streets. It's modern in the sense of its design is still iconic, and it's extremely reliable, believe it or not. And most of the actual parts that break down on it can be found on a site called AstonMartinBits.com, where you can actually take a lot of the pieces that break as you go and get them for a fraction of the cost. So the Aston Martin Vanquish makes for a lot of bang for the buck. But this was just, follow me over, this was just so much more than just a normal Vanquish. I wanted to go ahead, and you saw in my other video, I wanted to go ahead and do something modified. I gave up my McLaren for this car, and so it had to make sense, it had to be different. So I decided to reach out to my friends at Velocity AP. If you haven't seen them, you can go to velocityap.com. They're the leader in Aston Martin parts, and I decided to completely revamp this car. So we have a new header system in it, we have a new exhaust system in it, we have new high flow cats in it, we have a new tune in it, we have filters, we have suspension, and of course then we reached out to our friends at Wheels Boutique, who gave us this incredibly beautiful set of HREP 103s, which took almost 8 weeks to make, and are done in a graphite color that matches the carbon, giving the car a very unique look, a very exciting look, and a much more modernized and beefy look than the typical Vanquish. And the best part actually lies in the drive, not really in just the design, even though the design is iconic. Now our particular car, come on over, sports the carbon fiber mirrors, the carbon fiber strakes, and those things are optional. These are optional on the car. The interior has optional components, but the exterior, you'll notice the carbon at the bottom, the carbon in the front, and the carbon in the rear. All of these are actually standard on the car, and most people think that carbon options on the Vanquish are actually optional, like the front, rear, and side, but they're not, they're standard. Because what you don't know is that most and all Vanquishes, new generation Vanquishes, are actually carbon fiber painted over. So the entire car's carbon is just not exposed. Now on the inside of the car, you'll notice some very interesting tweaks for our particular car. We voted to have this incredible cross-stitch pattern across, and that by itself is an option or a feature, and we thought it would be nice to actually customize it and bring it out to here And so you can see here in this particular option, one of the attractive points here was to have this because it really adds to the design element. Now, one basic thing about the Vanquish you need to also understand, and I want to show you this again, just like I was saying earlier, you can see, again, the exposed carbon fiber just about everywhere. And so part of this is, again, the entire car's carbon is just painted over. So finally, one of the things you guys have to consider if you're going to be buying a Vanquish is look for a 2014, look for mileage under $15,000, pay roughly about $135,000 or below, and you should be set for the next 12 months enjoying a Vanquish at no additional cost. If you're going to opt out to make the car what we made it, then you may never want to sell it. So let's go for a drive and see why the Velocity AP Vanquish is so much more than a car with exhaust. So with the Vanquish, you retain the beautiful crystal key from the DBS, and the Vantage, which continues here. Really, really pretty. Again, it goes into the middle control units and becomes part of it. And listen to this. Now this sounds pretty chill and nice. But now, you ready for this? That's right. You ever hear a car that good sounding for an Aston? Well, you have now. So this car is so much more than exhaust. I mean, the header system to the cats to everything has been designed for one of the best sounding cars ever built anywhere. And it retains all the functionality of the car with the sport button, the dampers and everything else, but yet drives better, is faster, and amplifies the experience 1,000 folds because of the sound that just makes you not want to get off the throttle. So let's go for a ride and let's actually hear this in every gear and see why you need one of these right now. Alright guys, so here we are driving our new Vanquish, and honestly, car is very smooth, drives normal, no different than your regular one. Actually, a little bit better if I may add, because you're really getting a lot of the progressive springs that Velocity AP have, and those are just so much better than the factory units. Now I wanted to kind of leave the window down because I want you to kind of hear the way the car sounds at different modes. Right now it's very, very comfortable, we're just driving, nothing going on, but as you get the revs higher, you kind of hear the higher pitch kicking in, and it's just such a beautiful noise. Like, that's the best part about this car. The paddles again are really for usage, for more entertainment than they are for performance, and of course you retain all the things from my last review, which hasn't really changed, which are all the crystal buttons, which are really your gears. Now the downfall of the Vanquish is that it really has very limited storage space. While you have the rear seats, you have no glove box here, and your only small piece here is barely enough to keep a wallet. So leaving you with just one cup holder and very, very limited storage. That's not really awesome, but again, I don't think most people that are buying these cars are worried about the storage capacity. The nav units, some of the things you need to be aware of if buying a used Vanquish, these things rattle like crazy. And so they rattle like crazy, and unless you kind of tweak them and fix them, they're going to continue rattling and get worse over time. O2 sensors typically go bad on these cars fairly often, but otherwise they're pretty solid cars. So outside the little bits and pieces there and there, it's a pretty solid used exotic with very few issues. Now you'll see that the trim is one of the things with this car, is that the craftsmanship is fantastic. The digital buttons, everything is just really, really well put together, way ahead of its time, way better than a lot of comparable exotics. And the basic thing, I don't know why we have to hear that piece of crap. Like, I mean, if you're young and watching this, which I know most of you are, don't be that moron. Like, just don't do that shit. It's stupid. Like, if your car sounds like a lawnmower and probably goes like, what, 30 miles an hour when you're gunning it, it's probably the wrong car to invest in an exhaust system with. So before putting an exhaust system on a car, ask yourself, is my car going to sound like a lawnmower? And if that's the case, just don't do it, kids. Anyways, so back to the Vanquish. So again, you get a good vibe and feel for the car. Very smooth, but yet, you know, super fun, especially with the noise and the volume. Springs are better than stock. Exhaust and everything is a must. The kit costs about $8,000. With the install and everything, you're in at about 10, and it's really worth it. I can't stress that enough. It transforms the car more than any other car I've seen get transformed by a header and exhaust system. So a lot of fun there. Otherwise, in general, some other things to consider. The audio is really good. You got the Bang & Olufsen sound system with the tweeters coming out, which is pretty cool. You get the really nice stitched headliner, and of course the cross-stitch seat patterns, which makes it, again, makes the design very exciting. Personally, I love the Vanquish because I think it's such a great gentleman's car. It's set up so properly, and with a set of wheels, suspension, and some of these mods, it becomes not just a gentleman's car, but comparable to a car like the F12, minus the performance. I understand the F12 is a better car, but again, you're talking about a car that costs $100,000 more than this for a similar year and mileage car. And that's a pretty big deal, because I don't think the F12 is twice as good as this car, and that's kind of like the angle here. So as we go here, you're gonna kind of get a good feel for the audio pitch that this car creates. So again, you know, very quiet, but then again, as you get the higher revs, you hear the crackle. We're gonna go back here. So. You're hearing that high pitch, it's just unbelievable. Now, again, one of the things we were talking about in the Performante video was how exciting it was to have the top off, because you really could get the audio so nicely, right? And with this car, on the other hand, it's kind of the opposite, right? Because you have the roof and a lot of the insulation to prevent that noise from getting in the car. So it's a lot louder on the outside than it is obviously on the inside. But just to give you a feel, really, this is a GT. It shouldn't be compared to a sports car. It's not built to be a sports car. It's not put into a position to really be an exciting sports car. It's built to be an incredible cruiser. It's comfortable, it's fun, it sounds great, and of course it has some power. Now, how much power? Roughly about 500 to the wheels with all these upgrades, maybe give or take 10 horsepower. But again, we have to consider that this wasn't built to be a 500 horsepower race car. It was built to be a 500 horsepower cruiser, and for that, 500 horsepower is plenty. Now, other things to consider if you're going to be picking up a Vanquish is that the insurance in general is a little bit more expensive than other exotics, simply because if you were to get in an accident, you have to consider that there's a lot of carbon fiber on this car, including a lot of the pieces that are painted over, and can cost a lot of money to fix for insurance companies. So compared to a Lamborghini, you would roughly pay about 20% more to insure a Vanquish than a Lamborghini, and that's based on rates that I'm getting here in Florida. It could be different in your state, and of course my driving record's perfect. How? I have no idea, but it is. And so as a result of it, my rates are actually very fair, costing me roughly about $1,100 every 6 months to insure this car, which I felt was a very, very fair and good rate. You get heated and cooled seats, which is also cool, but the interface, you know, the entire interface here is really one of the worst parts of the car. It's very hard to navigate in general. I mean, just look at the radio. We just take a look here. If I want to change channels, or if I want to even bring up my favorites, I gotta figure out, you see, like I gotta do that, then I gotta keep going here. It doesn't tell me what station it is or anything. So again, it just sucks. Like, it's just very hard, and it takes multiple menus just to switch the radio station. It's not very efficient. And then of course the audio, like I'll let you hear it, so you can actually tell. Let's see, let me put some, there you go, put some Hispanic jam. Oh, I think I hit it off by accident, sorry. It's really not Hispanic. Back to the Alright, so good audio, great sounding car, good GT, not so good a sports car. But again, iconic design, and one of the best parts about owning a Vanquish, this is actually really interesting. So I've owned all types of exotics, right? Everything from Lamborghinis to Ferraris to McLarens and everything else. And there's one thing that's true about McLaren and Aston Martin more than any other brand, and that's the amount of respect from the mass public they generate. Most people don't know what a McLaren is, so they think that ultimately it's like a Bugatti. So even though you're driving a 570S, which is like 180 grand, maybe as low as 150 now, people think you're driving a Bugatti because the doors go up, which is like really interesting. But when it comes to Aston Martin, it's a gentleman's car that's highly respected amongst people. It's the James Bond car. It's the car that people look up to and say, wow, what a beautiful car. And even if you're a Ferrari owner, you don't diss the Aston Martin guys. If you're a Porsche owner, you don't diss the Aston Martin guys. Because they just don't win anything. They just win overall for the appeal and the elegance of the brand. And I think that's one of the key things with Aston Martin is it doesn't try to compete with Ferrari or Lamborghini for performance numbers or anything else. It's ultimately a young man's Bentley, and it does such a better job in design and in feeling than the Bentley does, especially if you're under like 80. So if you are, if you are younger and are considering a Bentley, highly recommend looking at the Vanquish, especially at these prices. It's going to be so hard to beat the car for the money when looking at comparable options, unless again you want a sports car. If you are going to be buying a sports car, then the Gallardo may seem like a more appealing proposition than the Vanquish. But I think for those of us that have enough sports car and getting too old and our backs start to hurt in certain cars like these can be driven on road trips. They're extremely comfortable, they're extremely fun, they sound great, and again, you got to consider that you're driving an Aston Martin, and that holds a lot of weight, both from a status standpoint and also holds a lot of weight from an experience standpoint where you're telling your friends and family about your car, part of the exotic car ownership experience, the excitement comes from the idea that some of it has some status to it. I mean, people may hide around it and say, hey, listen, I don't care about status, it's not important to me, it's not the why I buy a car. I get it. But for me, I look at it as, when you have a car like this, status comes naturally as part of it, so it can't be ignored, ultimately, is what I'm trying to say. And I think with this Vanquish, it does such a good job at honoring that in general. So there you have it. This is pretty much our review of the Velocity AP full power kit 2014 Vanquish, which can now be bought in the mid to low hundreds, and which makes it one of the best buys in that category, and something I think everybody should consider if they're looking for their next affordable, hackable sports car. And remember, guys, if you don't understand what I'm talking about when I say hacks, make sure to please click the link in the description so you too can actually start learning how to hack cars, how to get in and out of exotic cars without losing any money, learn the exotic car market. If you're in the car game, if you're watching these videos, eventually you want to be in a position to drive these cars. Now's a good time to start investing in your ability to understand how the market works and really get the tips and tricks necessary to put yourself in a position to get into one of these, because it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, and in many cases it can be driven for free. Okay guys, so you have watched us review this Vanquish, and now the time has come for you to subscribe, like this video, share it with your friends, especially people who might be looking for a Vanquish, and make sure to catch us on the next Exotic Car Hacks review. I'm out.